Sonic the Hedgehog is a funny topic, as the series has been around for 28 years and later this year will be its 29th. However, in the last almost 15 years, the quality of the series has been brought into question. As we all know, in 06, Sonic had an infamously horrendous outing and has never fully recovered. With any goodwill the series had built up after 06 being shot down in 2014 with the Sonic Boom spin-off on Wii U, which has led some people to the conclusion that the series needs to die as they're constantly getting it wrong. And some people are suggesting that they never got it right, even back in 1991. Now I consider myself a Sonic fan, nowhere near as extreme as some fans are, but I do like the blue blur. But one of the things that made me question if I really do or not is when faced with the question, the only responses I could give as to what is unquestionably good is the comic series in the OVA from 1996. On top of all that, there were a number of Sonic games I hadn't finished and some more I hadn't even touched. So I figured I would replay and play every mainline Sonic game and talk about each generation of Sonic games to find out what they did wrong and what they did right, if anything, if some people are to be believed. The three generations are the classic games, which will include Sonic 1, 2, 3, and Knuckles CD and Mania, as I felt it was weird to put it with the more modern games. Next are the adventure games, which include Sonic Adventure 1, 2, Sonic Hero, Sonic 06, and Shadow the Hedgehog, as even though it is a spin-off, many people don't see it as being a spin-off, so I will include it. And finally we have the boost games, which is Sonic Unleashed, Sonic Colors, Sonic Generations, Sonic Forces, and I guess Sonic Lost World, as it really doesn't go anywhere else. So let's start off at the start with the games that many people consider to be the golden age of Sonic, and some others consider to be the beginning and end for good Sonic games. Now for some context from my end, I was born in 1996, so the Dreamcast got discontinued when I was 5, which resulted in me not knowing that Sega made consoles until many years later. And during my teens I got into retro gaming and collecting, so I'd picked up a Mega Drive with 2 games, a multi-card featuring Golden Axe, Revenge of Shinobi, Streets of Rage, and a few more, and the second game I got was Rocket Knight Adventures, and I love the hell out of that game. Rocket Knight Adventures is a great game and deserves much better than the review I did of it. However, my collecting and exploring with these classic games was spread out through many different consoles and genres, so it wasn't until I was 19 that I had my first experience with classic Sonic games. And I absolutely hated every moment of it. I felt that the levels were cheap and that there wasn't any way for people to be able to play this properly without having played it religiously as a child. And as far as the first game was concerned, there were far too many instances where you just had to wait. And with each game, my anger was subsiding slightly to the point when I got to Sonic 3 and Knuckles, I was just annoyed rather than angry. And it would be a while before I played CD and Mania, which I enjoyed more because I cared less. And also a handful of other improvements that don't necessarily tie into what makes them good Sonic games. Now looking back on it, an issue that I wasn't too conscious of but I could feel was the fact that Sonic games had momentum, which encouraged going fast, and from the Sonic games I had played as a child and from seeing everything surrounding Sonic, I'd come to the conclusion that I was playing as the fastest thing alive. And because of that, I gotta go fast, gotta go faster, faster, Sonic X. Now, except for the speed bumps, the game is designed around allowing you to go fast and to speedrun the game, with level designs based around there being multiple paths, with the more difficult ones being the fastest. However, there are some parts of how the game is designed that I feel go against the idea of speeding through the game. There are the moments where you have to come to a dead stop, which everyone can agree is bad. But the main thing that I feel causes issues is the camera. In Sonic, you are in the dead center of the screen and you are fairly big on the screen, which results in you not being able to see as far ahead as you should be able to, because for some reason half the screen needs to be dedicated to seeing what's behind you and what you no longer need to deal with. This results in instances where you get hit by something and it doesn't really feel like you messed up because you didn't know that an enemy would be there. And this would be alleviated by the camera zooming out or having Sonic at the edge of the screen or something that would let you see more of the game, but as is, I get hit and I feel nothing because I've gotten used to being powerless against anything coming up because I wasn't familiar with the level. Now the defense for this is that these games are built with replay in mind. You are not supposed to be good on your first time through. And yeah, sure, not being good on your first time through isn't that alien of a concept. The idea that the game encourages replaying the game to get good enough to be just like what you've seen on TV is something I can get behind. However, I find their execution to be flawed. Take for example Devil May Cry. That's a series I wasn't too good at. When playing the first game for my review, I was getting Ds, but as I progressed, I was getting higher and higher rankings, ending in me getting a fair amount of S ranks and 5. The reason I was getting better at the series rather than just the game I was playing is because of a thing called skill transference, where my skill with DMC 3 translates into skill with DMC 4, which translates into skill with DMC 5. This even applies to games outside of the series. Like after playing through the DMC games, I decided that even though I have Bayonetta on Wii U, I should pick up the Switch version as it's apparently better. And I did a lot better than when I first played the game on PS3 and Wii U, because I played a game and understood its mechanics well enough that when faced with something similar, I was able to do well. And both of those games encourage a playstyle that is very rewarding, but is difficult if you aren't familiar with the games. Sonic encourages that, but doesn't have the skill transference that allows you to be anything but okay on your first attempt. And when you're playing at an okay level in Sonic, it's not very fun. Now this could have worked if they made it still an enjoyable experience to go slow, just not as much, but they didn't, so it's not very fun. Like take for example Metroid, has different endings based on time and how many items you've collected, which mixed with the sprawling maps encourages replay. But crawling through Metroid with not many items is still an enjoyable experience, which you will be doing because you don't know the map, and learning the map is fun because traversing the map is fun. But again, Sonic isn't fun slow, so learning the map isn't fun. knowing the map is fun, and I can't bring myself to agree that a game is good if the sales pitch includes it gets good on your 3rd or 4th run, because that's dumb. No game should require you to beat it multiple times before it gets fun. Now here comes the adventure games, which I not only played as a kid, but I played Adventure 2 religiously, so I am heavily biased, as my introduction to the series was either the OVA from 96 or Adventure 2 Battle, to which I then played Adventure 1 and learned disappointment. Largely from the hub world, which as a kid I hated, but I really liked Heroes, and I played Shadow like once or twice, and I never touched 06. Because you see, I'd gotten teased out of liking Sonic after wearing a Sonic shirt to school and had to endure that for 3 to 4 years. So I left the series on Shadow and Sonic Riders. Now, something annoying about these games is that even though they are grouped together, they have a lot of differences, and the issues with each game is unique, so unlike the classic games and the boost games, I can't just give a general overview, so I will have to go into a bit more detail about each game, as not only is there more detail, but also this is the most important era of Sonic, as it is the most divisive. So now let's detail what it's like to move forwards as Sonic, rather than right, in Adventure 1 and 2. And well, moving forwards makes it a lot easier to see what's coming up, so already I'm enjoying it more due to feeling more in control over where I go, because I can see the options before it's too late. Now at the same time, Sonic is a bit more finicky to control at high speeds, with slight movements being exaggerated due to his speed, and also due to it now being in 3D, there are more walls, so you do find yourself bumping into them when traveling at high speeds through a narrow tunnel. However, a lot of those tunnels are built like pipes so you can run along the roof, so that's not much of a problem. What is a problem in Adventure 1 though, is that there are some clipping issues, such as a camera clipping through a wall and being unable to correct itself so you can't see what you're doing, or you clipping through the floor and dying. But when that's not happening, Sonic is a lot of fun to control. And I didn't really have that many issues that I couldn't blame on my overconfidence or the aforementioned camera and physics issues, of which aren't an issue in Adventure 2. While having its issues, I feel that this is a great way to have Sonic in 3D, as it removes the issue of not being able to see what's coming ahead, which means that you can actually play the game as intended on your first run. Although one of the complaints that is brought up is the fact that in the old games you had short loops to run through, and in the 3D games you have these overly long set pieces, which is true, but at the same time there were multiple instances in the classic games where you were sent flying through multiple speed boosters into bounce pads that sent you into something else and you didn't really have to do anything. And I'd have to go through the footage to see if this is true, but to me it felt like there was more but shorter set pieces in classic levels, whereas in the adventure games there's fewer but they're longer. So to me it kind of balances out. Now for the most part people can agree that Sonic in these two games plays good. I personally would say great, but more people can agree on good. The questionable aspect, however, is all of Sonic's mates. And we'll get the odd ones out of the way first by saying Big the Cat should not have been in part of Adventure 1, as all he does is fish, which mechanically is okay, but out of every gameplay mechanic they could have introduced, this makes the least sense, as it isn't about moving forward but instead about sitting down and waiting, which is the opposite of what these games are about. Amy is a bit better, but her being slower than everyone else for no real reason with no added benefits means that you need to play the game like you would as Sonic, but now slower. So as a result, she is not very fun to play as. But now we're getting to the good ones. Tails plays exactly like Sonic, has the exact same levels as Sonic, but now he can fly and it's a race to the finish. This is good, but personally feels more like a bonus mode or an unlockable feature in the same vein as Richter and Symphony rather than a main part of the game. Which makes sense because he was the Maria Renard of Sonic 3, but if I beat the game as Richter, I don't want to do another run as Maria to fight the true form of Dracula. So while it does play good, I felt that they could have mixed things up a bit more. Like E102 Gamma. He, like everyone else, doesn't have exclusive levels, but he's able to set himself apart because his levels don't give you enough time to finish them, but makes it so you can sacrifice enemies for more time on the clock. So it turns the game into a run and gun which, unlike fishing, falls in line with a game about speed. You aren't as fast or as mobile, but due to strict time constraints, you're still booking it to the end of the level, which is different from our friend Knuckles, who unlike Sonic, he doesn't chuckle. He also doesn't race to the end of his levels, as his gameplay involves him exploring the level to find pieces of the Master Emerald that are in randomized locations. Now, Treasure Hunt isn't what comes to mind when someone thinks of gameplay styles that would fit in a Sonic game, but it somehow works. This is possibly due to the fact that while yes, climbing up walls is slow, running, jumping and gliding are not, which allows you to maintain speed and still explore without slowing down. This is aided by the radar, which tells you when you get close to an emerald so you don't need to be so thorough that you need to slow down, which also acts as a point of contention when talking about him in Adventure 2, because everything but the radar is the exact same between the two games. As in 1, his radar would respond to every emerald regardless of order, but in 2 it forced you to search for them in order, despite you being able to get them in any order. Now from what I hear, this is the breaking point for fans of both games, as the radar nerf made Knuckles' levels go from at least enjoyable to being bad. Now I'll grant that this is a bad change, but it's not deal breaking. If your complaints are about treasure hunting in space, I'd be more understanding. Now using that to transition into talking about Adventure 2, let's talk about Adventure 2. This time around there are fewer different playstyles, but the same amount of characters as each style is shared between two characters. Sonic and Shadow play the exact same as each other, which is the exact same as Sonic and Adventure 1, but with some more fine-tuning. Same goes for Knuckles and his counterpart Rouge the Bat, who is largely known for giving kids an awakening experience. Now, as I said, they play similarly enough compared to Adventure 1 that I don't know if there's any differences outside of the radar, but I don't doubt it. However, the first couple of levels are good, their final levels are way too wide open, and mixed with the radar nerf made those final levels horrid, especially Rouge's, because that has all the same problems on top of being Mario Galaxy with a unique twist of being bad. Now, while Security Hole is infamous for being bad, I will say that it is deserved, but really its main problem is the radar nerf, which mixed with the time limit makes the level bad. If you got rid of the radar nerf, then the level would be fine, maybe even good, but as is, it's bad. Then finally we have Eggman and Tails. They share a lot of mechanics with Gamma except for the time gimmick, so while they don't have the push to go fast, I feel that this is still an okay third playstyle. While it is slower than Sonic and Knuckles, it mixes things up enough to make it distinct enough to be its own thing, while still being a platformer that allows you to go fast if you know the level. So what this ends up as is a game with 3 distinct playstyles that are all different, but still work off each other and revolve around the different ways to play. See how fast you can beat a level, explore a level to see all of its secrets and hidden bonuses, and kill all the enemies before progressing. You can do all 3 in any given style, but each one is built around one of them. However, the public opinion rests on only Sonic's levels being good, and I never really understood this for all the reasons I just outlined. I can get that some of the returning playstyles, while improved, have elements removed which to a degree makes them lesser, but something not being as good doesn't automatically mean it's bad, and the missing features from Adventure 1 aren't deal breakers. So a number of complaints I find to be non-issues. Like for example, one complaint not about returning mechanics I hear is Omochao being a pest, but he is super easy to avoid, and before replaying it I wasn't even sure if he appeared in later levels because Child Me was able to avoid him, so I couldn't remember if he was there or not. So if a 6-year-old can avoid him no problem, then I can't imagine others having much of an issue. Now, a complaint that is a bit more valid is that Tails is in a mech rather than running around like he used to, but it's honestly not that big of a deal. Tails has always been associated with machinery, even way back in Sonic 2 where he would fly the plane, so it's not like his personality's out of whack, it's not like this isn't something he wouldn't do, it's just that he hasn't done this before. And personally, I'm not that upset with that we're losing a playstyle that didn't exist in Sonic 1, 2 or CD, and largely served as an easy or bonus mode in Sonic 3, and just felt like a bonus mode in Adventure 1. So as a result, I'm not too sure why people hate on these games more than the classics. Yes, they aren't perfect, but neither are the classics. I will grant that the flaws with the classic games can be negated for the most part by being good enough, whereas the adventure games not so much, but that's hardly a compliment. There's a lot you can negate by getting used to it, doesn't mean it's not bad. And you can prefer one over the other, but calling these two games bad, or mostly bad, unlike classic, is a bit much. These next couple of games though, I will not fight you on being bad. Now, the main issue with Sonic Heroes is that to combat not everyone being as keen on Sonic's mates as I apparently am, or the people who are super into Team Fur Affinity, they made it so you play as 3 separate characters at the same time, which would be fine, but results in you being forced to swap between the 3 almost randomly, which sucks because they don't all move at the same speed, so whenever you switch off from the speed character, you're suddenly brought to a screeching halt. And you do need to do this because they felt the need to make it so you can't just play as one character, because otherwise all of their hard work would be for naught, which in theory isn't a bad idea, having Sonic run as fast as he can, then bringing out Knuckles to fight some enemies or to move something heavy, then using Tails to fly over a gap does sound kinda cool. But they should have made it that you play as Sonic and you just summon them for their gimmick. You press the Tails button and Tails comes in and picks you up and carries you for a minute. You press the Knuckles button and he comes out and does some swinging attacks that hit enemies and maybe obstacles that block hidden pathways. It's a very simple way to fix the game, because as is, there's no sense of momentum or speed and the whole game is very boring and not fun. If they made it so you had assists instead of team swapping, that'd be noticeably better. Marvel was already out, so what's the excuse? Now look, there are more faults with the game, such as Sonic's gameplay not being as good, which according to the grapevine is because his acceleration and top speed have been doubled, but nothing else was changed to accommodate that, so he feels super slippery and imprecise. So, Sonic controls poorly. You have to constantly swap between characters that not only control poorly, but also break the pace. Mixing characters always talking,
I'm falling! Wow, my head's spinning! I'm falling! I'm falling! Wow, my head's spinning! Wow, my head's spinning! Wow, my head's spinning! I'm falling! I'm falling! I'm falling! Wow, my head's spinning! I'm falling! I'm falling! I'm falling! Shut up, Tails!
and you've got one hell of a game on your hands. Oh, and add on the fact that there are 4 other teams for you to play as, which offer very little variety, and that's Sonic Heroes. They removed unique playstyles to replace it with messing with the one playstyle everyone could agree on, and still made you play as Sonic's mates, but instead of being different, they now act as hard mode, easy mode, and mission mode, where you have to accomplish some random task to finish the level. Look, there's a reason that this game isn't brought up much, because it's just boringly bad, and there's not much more to say about it. I can mention a lot of small things, but it's really not worth it. Shadow the Hedgehog, however, is much more of a laughingstock, so let's detail that. And as I said at the start of this video, this game is a spin-off, so I feel that I shouldn't really be talking about this since I didn't talk about Knuckles' Chaotix, but it is constantly brought up and is for some reason considered mainline by many, so I will talk about it. Shadow the Hedgehog is a game that you can tell how bad it is just by looking at it. The main gimmick and selling point was giving Shadow a gun and a bike. Now, as someone whose best chows from Sonic Adventure 2 are named Coma and Cash after James Earl Cash from Manhunt, I feel it would be hypocritical for me to mock the game for being edgy during a point in time where I was also. But I don't need to because you already know how bad and dumb this is, so I can ignore that anyway. So getting to the most important bit, how the game differs from what's come before. And it is quite different. Now, if you don't care for side objectives or alternate paths, then this is a very short and subpar Sonic game. However, that's not the crux of the issue with how the game plays, as the main point and focus is the branching levels, where each level you can beat in one of 3 ways, and each one will take you to a different level, resulting in there being 22 levels and 10 endings. The issue is that more often than not, what you need to do to get to the side levels is tedious and slows down the pace greatly. And on top of the fact that after beating a level, you can just select whatever level you want, but in order to unlock a new level, you need to start a new run and get there yourself, resulting in you playing the first couple of missions multiple times just to get to the later areas. So looking past the edge, you get something overwhelmingly okay that just gets worse when you try and engage with its new ideas, such as guns and cars and split level design. And now the final entry of the adventure games is Sonic 06, the creme de la creme of bad. It is well documented how bad this game is, so I feel there's a lot I don't need to talk about, like the infamous kiss, Knuckles ragdolling, the poor acting, and so on and so forth. The game itself has so many issues that we'd be here all day if I listed them all. So what I will say is that this game is a cool and interesting evolution of the formula built in Adventure 1 and 2, and I'd love to see these ideas in a finished game, because when it comes to level design, gameplay mechanics, and everything surrounding how the game plays, it's all good, and it seems like the guys who worked on the design side of things knocked it out of the park. The problem was translating that into something playable. The game was infamously rushed and had only a skeleton crew to make something ambitious, so there was no time to polish the controls, make sure the levels worked as intended, remove bugs, glitches, and exploits, make the townsfolk look like anything but stock assets that came with the engine. It honestly is the most tragic game because it could have been the best in the series if the team had more time, which is why I'm super keen to see where Project 06 goes, as it's a fan remake of 06 to not only fix the game, but to also get it on PC so other fans can fix it themselves and make improvements, because as is, it feels bad to control. The levels can be quite awkward to progress through, and there are a handful of areas that are just bad because of reasons that only apply to whatever specific area you're thinking of. So that makes with a terrible story that is bad for a magnitude of reasons resulted in Sonic becoming a laughingstock, and is an example of Sega learning the wrong lessons from their failures. 06 didn't fail because of its design. It failed because it was rushed out the door before it was finished. Shadow didn't fail because people don't like branching paths. People didn't like the tedium involved with the branches. If Star Fox can make it work, so can you. But Sega decided in all of its wisdom to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And while Heroes, Shadow, and 06 were clunkers, Adventure 1 and 2 were great. And the thing that made the other games bad were because of how they tried to be different. Heroes tried to condense Sonic and Friends into one playstyle and it sucked. Shadow tried to focus on split paths and tedious tasks, which were boring. 06 tried to be rushed and understaffed, and it was horrid. If they stayed with the adventure formula and tried to fix what people didn't like and try to evolve it, then I think that would result in something great. Keep Sonic's playstyle, which people liked. Give Knuckles the radar from 1, but he controls like in 2. Give Eggman stages a timer and let Tails fly. If you did that, then there would be very little for people to complain about. But that's not what happened. That's not what we got or what we're getting. Sonic 06 failed so hard, Sega doesn't want to do anything remotely similar, which is why the series stories from the adventure games, Shadow's character arc that progressed through 3 separate games, the multiple storylines and character development are gone, because 06 screwed up. But in all fairness, it's not all doom and gloom. We still have the boost games to look at, the games that replaced Adventure as the modern formula, and as of this video is the current style for modern Sonic. And the general perception for these games is a lot more favourable and consistent than the previous generation of Sonic games, but they aren't without their flaws. Now again, for context, as I mentioned, I stopped playing Sonic games after Shadow, but I would start playing again with Lost World and Forces, to then go back and play Unleashed, Colors and Generations for the first time for the sake of this video. So I'm not as disappointed with Forces as a number of people were. It has its issues, but I'm not too upset, and I actually did enjoy what I played. However, I'm a little upset that its playstyle is what the current Sonic games are, and let me explain why. Now, the boost games allow for insane speed, and it seems that the main focus is that speed, as you run through what are effectively long hallways with things in your way, be it enemies, pits, or walls. Now, it seems that Sonic Team took a page out of the Crash Bandicoot approach to 3D platformers. Now, the controls are tight and responsive, and they give you plenty of tools to keep things going and to be able to handle all of the things thrown at you while maintaining speed. Like, for instance, you can dash to the sides by pressing the bumpers, so you don't need to worry about crashing into the side of a wall because you turn too hard, or about not turning fast enough that you hit a wall. The side hop is very quick and works like a charm. The next thing they added was the aforementioned boost, which if you're good allows you to tear through the level at ludicrous speeds or to get back to pace if you mess up and are stopped. Throw in some DK barrels and tricks that get you to alternate paths when done right, and you get a game that's very rewarding to do well in. However, my main issue with these games is that often it feels like I'm holding down boost and just reacting to things coming at me, like I'm playing an endless runner rather than a fast-paced platformer. So luckily the games aren't just that, but for the most part I'm not too keen on how they change things up, because the mainstay is that the game will transition to 2D and you have to platform around like that. And personally I think that the 2D parts feel at least a little bit better, and also don't have the same issues that I have with the classic Sonic, but at the same time I can't say that they are better designed. So while in my opinion they do play better, I can't say that they are ever terribly interesting, which makes it both better and worse in generations where to mix things up you play half the game as classic Sonic. We can tell the level's 2D designs works better for classic Sonic, but again for me it just feels better to play modern Sonic in 2D despite the lesser 2D level design. And now while I do say that they are issues, they aren't deal breakers, and I still do like these games. And as far as the series as a whole is concerned, Sonic Colors is in my top 3 favorite Sonic games. It's just that I feel that they could have been better than what they are, and some of these games try to do more but for one reason or another didn't quite work out. As I said, Generations had classic Sonic levels, but as someone who doesn't care for classic Sonic, I didn't care for those levels. Unleash had the Werehog, and as someone who likes God of War, I did actually have fun with this, but I thought that they were a bit basic. However, I would love to see a spin-off doubling down on the idea and maybe giving Sonic's mates the same treatment, and I can admit that in-game, it did mess with the pacing, and also only having one battle theme is pretty dumb. And then there's Colors, which added a ton of power-ups, which I felt actually worked well, compared to Forces, which copy Generations, but also had a third playstyle for your creator character. In all honesty, I liked how the OC played, and wouldn't mind seeing more of that, but the issue with Forces was that the levels were way too short, and also not very interesting, and bosses were reused a lot, and the controls just weren't as smooth. And all of this means that as far as I'm concerned, the boost games are all varying levels of good, but just to feel a little bit simple, and the ways that they try to mix things up just aren't always the strongest. It seems like they've got a good foundation to build off, but just haven't gone too far with it yet. Now looking at everything that I've said, every compliment and complaint, I have to say that Sonic is a pretty good series. Sure, there was an intense rough patch that lasted from 04 to 08 when Unleashed came out, but if only 4 years out of the almost 30 that Sonic's been around were dire, and 2 of those years were because of inactivity, then I'd say that counts as a good track record. Sure, they haven't been able to knock it out of the park in about 20 years, but you don't always need to. Sega played around with some ideas and failed miserably, but now they've got something that people like, and have been smartly toying around with it for the last 12 years. Well, actually 9 to 10, because Werehog wasn't their brightest moment. But still, the last 10 years have been great, and so were the first 10. So if you've managed to stay this long and you've ever had the thought that Sonic was never good, then I hope that I have convinced you otherwise. I hope that you would consider looking at some of these good to great games. And I hope that, like me, you are somewhat optimistic for the future of the series. Like, I'm not expecting a home run or anything, but I feel confident in expecting something that I will, for the most part, enjoy. Now, I actually have no idea what the next project is, but since the next year will be the series' 30th anniversary, I imagine it won't be too long before we learn what's coming next. I would think that would be another boost game, but Takashi Iizuka, the head of Sonic Team, claimed that how well Mania does will affect the direction that they take the series. So I don't know if Sonic is going to go back to being 2D with Christian Whitehead at the helm, or if Sonic Team will take over and try to make 2D work. Or maybe they would make Sonic Adventure Mania because they were seeing if older styles could be brought back and be successful. Or maybe not. Who knows what crazy old Sega will do now. Next year will be Sonic's 30th anniversary, so they might do something big, or they might not. Only time will tell. Oh, wait, no, damn, forgot my last word. It's like, kind of like Mario Galaxy, but a bit more awkward and nowhere near as good. So, yeah. Bye.